Kính thưa quý vị khán thính giả của chương trình PhoBolsaTV, liên quan tới vụ việc ông Trịnh Xuân Thanh, cho đến nay chúng ta có thể thấy hai luồng thông tin hoàn toàn trái ngược nhau. Bộ Ngoại giao Việt Nam và truyền thông trong nước khẳng định ông Trịnh Xuân Thanh tự ra đầu thú, mặc dù chưa đề cập tới việc làm như thế nào ông Trịnh Xuân Thanh đã di chuyển từ Đức về Việt Nam để tự thú. Còn về phía Bộ Ngoại giao Đức, báo chí Đức và báo chí quốc tế thì xem đây là một vụ bắt cóc, vi phạm luật pháp của Đức và luật pháp quốc tế. Cho đến nay, đâu là sự thật, đâu là việc bịa đặt, vẫn chưa ngã ngũ. Ngày hôm nay chúng tôi sẽ có buổi nói chuyện với luật sư Arno Van Dyk từ văn phòng luật sư Arno Van Dyk ở thành phố Irvine. Luật sư Arno Van Dyk chuyên về luật quốc tế, luật thuế vụ và luật di trú. Hi, thank you very much for coming to the show today. Yeah. First, have you heard about this case with Mr. Trịnh Xuân Thanh?
Oh yes, definitely. Well, obviously this case has grabbed the attention of the entire international community. It's not every day that a country, in this case Vietnam, is accused of violating another country's sovereignty by kidnapping a citizen, one of their own citizens, out of the country when that citizen went to the foreign country to seek asylum. So definitely very interesting to see how this case progresses.
Is there any similar case like this happened before in the U.S.?
Well, there's no documented cases, fortunately, of citizens being abducted in the U.S. and being returned to their country when they seek asylum in the U.S. I think the reason for that is a couple of reasons. Border security in the U.S., it would be very difficult for kidnappers to come in and out of the U.S. and extract an asylum seeker, also because of the geographic location of the U.S. as well. They'd have to most likely fly to a different country with long flights over the Pacific or the Atlantic Ocean in order to do that. With that being said, there have been cases of the U.S. government abducting citizens of other foreign countries. In the landmark case of U.S. versus Alvarez in 1992, the U.S. government went into Mexico and abducted one of the Mexican citizens, a doctor, a physician that was accused of being involved in the death of one of the USDA agents. In that case, the Supreme Court sided with the U.S. government and stated that the Dr. Alvarez, could be tried in the U.S., even though he was not extradited through a treaty, but basically illegally abducted by kidnapping in Mexico.
In your professional experience, what would the U.S. respond to a case like this happen in the U.S. soil?
Well, in my opinion, if a case like that happened in America, the U.S. would consider that an act of war, and they would most likely take military action depending on who's responsible for the kidnapping. That's if it happened with a U.S. citizen. Once again, very unlikely that something like that would happen. The case at hand is something that we don't see every day. I would believe even with a non-U.S. citizen, an asylum seeker, the U.S. would still most likely consider that an act of war because it does intrude on the U.S. sovereignty. So I think it's something that the U.S. would take very seriously. This is obviously different than the Otto Warmbier incident that happened recently as well, where a U.S. citizen goes to a foreign country, in Otto Warmbier's case to North Korea, and is then arrested by the foreign country. But in that case, sovereignty is not involved because obviously the U.S. sovereignty wasn't violated. It is a U.S. citizen that was arrested in the foreign country. But as far as a U.S. citizen being illegally kidnapped in the U.S., I don't see that situation or scenario happening. And if it does happen, the U.S. most likely would consider that an act of war.
Interesting. Since the story broke out, many people have commented that Germany gave him the asylum because of the money he brought with him. Would the U.S. do the same thing, like giving someone the asylum because of the money amount they brought to the U.S.?
Well, I don't believe any country would officially grant asylum to any citizen just because they're bringing wealth with them. The U.S. specifically, in order to seek asylum in the U.S. or submit an application for asylum, the applicant needs to show three things. The first, the asylum applicant must establish that he's being persecuted by a foreign government or in his home country. Secondly, he has to show that he's being persecuted because he's part of a protected group, meaning either because he's part of a specific religion, race, nationality, because of his political opinion or social beliefs. And thirdly, he would have to show that the government is either involved in the persecution or that they cannot control the conduct of private actors. So, as you can see, with the basic requirements of asylum, wealth is never involved. From a practical standpoint, it may play a small role, and also interestingly enough, since in this case Mr. Tan is accused of criminal conduct in Vietnam. Now, criminal conduct by itself wouldn't disqualify a person from seeking asylum in itself. Obviously, grave acts of misconduct, violent criminal acts, things of that nature would disqualify a person, but financial acts by itself would not. A person seeking asylum is required to list on their asylum application any criminal issues they have faced. In Mr. Tan's case, he's only being accused of the issues. He hasn't been convicted of any crimes as of yet. So, as of now, I believe he would most likely qualify for asylum in the U.S. as well. But it's obviously entirely within the discretion of the U.S. government whether they want to grant the asylum.
As a lawyer specializing in tax, could you give us some of your opinions regarding how the money transferred to the U.S. by foreigner fugitives would be investigated and treated?
The U.S. would consider money from all sources worldwide as taxable income. So once an asylum seeker decides to come to the U.S., he would be subject, and reside in the U.S., he would be subject to U.S. tax laws, meaning all income from all sources worldwide would be treated as income, including from illegal activities. So if the asylum seeker are facing corruption charges in a different country, even those illegal activities, if those are still income-producing activities, those would be treated as taxable as well. The other large issue to look out for any new residents or any asylum seekers that come into the country is that they are subject to the foreign bank account reporting requirements, or FBAR for short, which basically states that any financial assets of more than $10,000 need to be reported to the U.S. On an annual basis. The penalties for these accounts staying unreported is very harsh, so very important for people to be aware of those requirements. As far as the specific case, I don't think that there would be any specialized investigation into the tax treatment of the assets because Mr. Tan would be coming into the country as a new resident. But if the Department of Justice or tax agencies decided to investigate it, they would have to do their own independent investigation. It wouldn't be subject to any of the rumors or any foreign country investigation.
Thank you. This question relates directly to the Vietnamese community right here in the U.S. Since this story coming out, there are a lot of threads posting on social media platforms that the Vietnamese living in the U.S. with activities against the Vietnamese government should be worried about getting kidnapped if they continue their activities. What is your thought about that threat? Would the U.S. government be able to protect those citizens or legal residents from that potential threat?
Well, I think as this case in Germany shows, nothing is outside of the realm of possibility. So anything can happen. However, the U.S. has always been a strong defender of First Amendment rights to free speech, and I believe the U.S. government would take any measures to protect its own citizens from any type of illegal kidnapping from sovereign nations. I'm speculating, but I would like to believe that U.S. citizens or anyone living in the U.S. is most likely shouldn't be concerned with any of those issues, since we haven't seen these type of actions by a sovereign government probably since the communist era. It's really not something that happens every day. In this case also we were dealing with someone with political affiliations with large amounts of wealth. So your average citizen living in the US most likely have nothing to be concerned about.
Thank you very much. Chúng ta vừa mới nghe những chia sẻ các thông tin của luật sư Arnold một lần nữa từ văn phòng luật sư Arnold Van Dyke, chuyên về luật thuế vụ, luật quốc tế và luật di trú. Với những thông tin đó thì hy vọng đã đem tới một phần nào những cái mong muốn tìm hiểu liên quan tới luật pháp ở Hoa Kỳ, có thể quan hệ tới cái câu chuyện ông Trịnh Xuân Thanh hiện nay rất nhiều người quan tâm. Thank you again. Thank you very much for your information, and I hope we will have more updates later in the future.
Yes, you're very welcome.
Thank you.